I think that a lot can be accomplished by belief and by the willingness to sacrifice. And if you're in the beginning stage of a business, I think you have to come into it with the understanding that you are going to have to sacrifice a lot to get through those first 2 or 3 years. Whatever you value as far as time, money, social life, all of that, you're going to have to be willing to put aside to make your business grow.
Welcome to the Media Core Minute Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Langmaid. I run a video production company based out of Minnesota. Today in the studio, I'm joined by Jeremiah Watson. Jeremiah is the CEO of Watson Recycling and Infinite Recycling Technologies. How you doing today?
Doing great. Appreciate you having me on, Josh.
Absolutely. I'm glad that we got you on here today.
Yeah.
I was thinking back, and we were just chatting before this. I thought it was last year that we had worked with you guys early on, but realized that it was 2 years ago, 2020.
Time flies, and it's flown a lot.
It's quick, and a lot has happened and changed.
Yes.
So I'm pumped to hear more about where you guys are at with things, and yeah. But before we kind of get into some of the story and history, tell us listeners, like, what is Watson Recycling? What do you guys do? And then also what Infinite does. Yeah,
well, no problem. Watson Recycling, as it currently exists, recycles all manner of material. We started as a general curbside type recycling, so aluminum cans, newspapers, plastic bottles. And then as the markets for that, because those are all commodities, as the markets changed, we adapted to primarily metal recycling. And so we expanded a couple of times. And then we started to take on some large industrial accounts, and they said, okay, it's great you're recycling our metal, but can you help us find outlets for recycling like our plastics and our cardboard? Mm-hmm. So as it exists today, we recycle primarily metal, but also cardboard, plastic, glass, whatever manufacturing waste some of the customers may produce, we work to help them recycle it.
Because it's probably nice for them to just go, hey, one-stop shop. Can you take all this stuff?
Well, that's right. And they don't know. So their business is their business. What we're dealing with is the waste from their business, and they have no idea where to find somebody to help turn that from going to the landfill to go to a good secondary use. So they bring us in, and that's our job, and that's really our niche, is to take the waste and turn it back into a resource. So
love it.
Yeah.
So briefly touch on Infinite Recycling just before we get too far into that. Because that was kind of like, what would you call it? It's an offshoot, a whole new company. They are separate.
So they are separate. They started off as, just a division of Watson Recycling, but because it was such a growth opportunity, we did split it off in its own company. But it started the same way. We had a couple of large customers that we recycled for, and they said, we've got all this laminated glass. And this goes back probably to 2014. Actually, and can you help us take this out of the waste stream? And it was a couple of customers per year, and we started to realize over time there's a lot of this going to landfill. So it's just an attempt to help our customers. We were looking all over the country to find a recycler to take this laminated glass. Realized nobody in the U.S. is recycling this laminated glass. So from there we knew enough to know that it could be done.
Right.
It wasn't something that was impossible. So we spent 2 or 3 years developing a technology. We hired a engineering company and a manufacturing company to build us equipment. And we have a machine that can take a clean separation of the laminated glass, and it's just blown up from there.
Separates them so you can recycle them.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we'll definitely get more into that. But I always like starting history. Were you always living in this area? Did you kind of grow up in this area?
I did, yeah. In fact, so my family's been in this area for over 100 years.
Oh, wow.
I grew up I was born in Rochester, but grew up in Casson, and then out near Byron. We had a farm.
Yep.
My dad always had a business in town, so Rochester was always our home base. And I've, probably really never strayed too far from that my whole life. So it's myself, my family, grandparents, going back for a long time have been in this area.
That's great.
Yeah.
So school wise, did you go to college at all?
Yeah, so I went to a 2-year Bible college.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't nothing business related, nothing degree related, just a 2-year degree in
Yep.
Bible studies. So as far as business goes, I have no training outside of the School of Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
And some high schooling, but
So why Bible school?
I think that was something I wanted to do. You
Yeah.
know, Bible college, my faith was very important, you know, and so that was a chance to further it. And then really, I think I would have gone on to college further after that. It was just a 2-year school.
Yep.
So that's not, it was just 2 years. But at the end of 2 years, my dad said, hey, we need you. Can you come help us in the summer?
Yep.
You know, and, at the recycling center. So I came back and that
Kind
was
of just
kind of
stayed. Yeah.
Yep.
That's interesting because I actually did 1 semester at a Bible college.
You did? Which one?
Yeah, out in Wyoming, small. The town is called LaGrange, and it's probably population like 300 people.
You're kidding.
And the school took up a majority of that population, and I don't even know how I originally heard of it. But yeah, I did a semester. I mean, it was fantastic,
Yeah.
and loved every minute of it. But I just didn't see like, okay, I don't think I'm going to be in the ministry
You weren't going to be a pastor.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, this has been awesome, but like I'm gonna go back and just see kind of what happens.
Yeah.
And go from there. But that's sweet though. So did that, and that was about what kind of year?
So like 02, I graduated high school.
Okay.
03, 04. So I've been 05, I would have come back to.
And that's when Dad was like, hey, we need some help.
Yeah,
here.
just for the summer.
Yeah. So it started like just like, hey, summer job kind of thing.
I mean, I obviously worked in the family business my whole life.
Right.
Outside of maybe a few years in high school and then up in the cities, I had a different job. But otherwise, I'd been part of the family business, whatever that business was at the time, for my whole life. So
Well, that's a good question right there. What were the businesses then? What was Dad into before?
yeah, primarily waste hauling.
Yep.
Not so much recycling, but he had a good sized waste hauling business that he built up from kind of scratch. Really, that was going back to the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
In the mid 90s, he sold, and actually this other company bought him and a competitor. And then they merged it into a company that sold to Veolia, which became Superior, which today, then it became Advanced. Today it's, then became GFL, and today I think it's, what is it? Lakeshore Recycling, LRS.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
those two companies were the foundation that became that company.
That's great.
Yeah, so he started with that. He always had this little recycling company on the side.
So he always had that.
He always had it. It was on North Broadway. It was about maybe 1,000 square feet of warehouse, and that was it. We bought like aluminum cans, newspapers.
Was it just family? And do you have any employees?
We
or was
had,
it just
if I recall growing up, and I did go to work with my dad at a really young age, so probably like 6 or 7,
no way.
Yeah, no, probably because my mom
Right.
wanted to get some peace and quiet. But I would say we had 2 to 3 employees at any time.
Yeah.
And by that time, the last employee had passed away. He had been there forever, and he retired and passed shortly after. But so it's just family. So myself and maybe 2 brothers. Was all that was there.
So when did Dad sell then?
He sold in like 1995 probably. He started 2 other businesses, 2 other waste hauling companies that were unsuccessful at the end.
Yep.
And so when it was all said and done, money was spent.
Right.
What was left was this little shop on North Broadway.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So he kind of sold it and went, I'm going to try these other endeavors,
Yeah.
and it didn't go
Bought
the way
some
he
real
expected.
estate.
Okay.
Which was great.
Yep.
We had a good chunk of property for a while, and then it just
Yeah.
went downhill, with the other endeavors that he had going on. And so sold the property,
Yep.
we were at that point sort of, we didn't have a lot of money left. So we
Right.
were literally sitting there on 500 or 1,000 square feet of warehouse, and that was it.
So when you got called back and Dad was like, "Hey, can you come work this summer?" That was 2005.
Mm-hmm.
So Watson Recycling wasn't very big at that time.
No.
Then. So what did it look like at 2005?
I mean, it was really like, if you ever would have gone there, it was 2 overhead doors in a low, like a low ceiling warehouse We had a machine that crushed cans because aluminum cans were a big part of the business.
Yep.
And then we also took in paper, and that was the other part of the business. And other than that, we didn't do much at all. I mean, maybe just a few thousand pounds a year of other types of metals. So it was almost nothing.
That's wow. So you so 2005 you did the summer and then decided not to go back to school, and you're like, hey, I want to work here. I want to work with the family business.
Yeah. Well, I think what happened is I realized at some point during that time, how do I put it? It could be so much better,
Yeah.
So I think the big...
So you saw potential.
I saw potential. I remember we used to work 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, every week. We just worked like dogs. We had a Saturday, we had a big day of buying aluminum cans. It was like 4,000 pounds, which is a lot of cans. I mean, a lot of cans. We sold them, and I remember thinking, okay, this is a great day, and looked at what our profit was, and on that whole amount of cans, which is, you buy them, you pay the money out, you bale them, ship them. It's like 10 cents a pound, $400. And I said, there's no way people are doing this for $400. There's got to be better. There's something better out there for market. So what really had happened, we were selling our material to a competitor, and we just weren't realizing any of the margins. So he was taking
just like a larger competitor.
A larger competitor.
That could take more.
That's right.
Yep.
And so it's just we had no cash, so it's hard to
build up.
Yeah, basically, if
money,
the next step up is shipping to a mill or a foundry, and they want a semi-load, so that's 40,000 pounds. So that whole process, but that would have been 4 times the profit.
Right.
So it just took a while to. I just sort of.
So how did it evolve? Because I mean, now we know that it got a lot bigger. So like, what was
That's what happened.
What started happening?
I started calling around.
Just get more.
Yeah, so I realized number one, we got to get a better price to get more in, because if you pay a certain price, you only get a certain amount.
Right.
So that was number one, and then to really hit that next level, you have to have a certain amount to sell, and so it's like a double-edged sword. You have to have both things working at the same time, and we happen to be able to do so. But yeah, it was just a serious, honestly, it was a stroke of luck.
Yeah.
The biggest part of it was a stroke of luck. We literally took these cubes of cans and put them back of a pickup truck and took them to this competitor. I asked him for pricing on something else. I can't remember what it was, maybe copper or something like that. He wrote down the pricing on a notepad with a logo on top, and I knew the logo was a bigger company, right? So I'm like, well, I know how it works.
Yeah.
Like the person that's the higher end up is going to send their customer a notepad for Christmas.
Yep.
I knew how it went. So I called them.
Yeah.
And it snowballed from there. We found
And that was the company that you were doing that would need a semi-load.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. And then it turns out they weren't even where we eventually ended up either. I mean, we did sell them material until we got bigger, and then we just went, more and more and more. The closer you get to the source that can take the material to turn into new material,
That's where you're making a bigger profit.
That's where the value is.
Okay.
Everybody in between has to take their cut to handle it, You're
right.
So, but yeah, so
That's
it was
really
honestly
cool.
just a stroke of I don't know, luck of being willing to, call. But we found that, and then we just kind of grew and grew and grew, and we made a little more profit, which allowed us to pay a little more, which let us get more volume. So we went from, that was 05. By 08, we'd rent out the rest of what we could on that same strip of buildings, which was like 3,000 square feet. So not that it was big, but it was went from 1,000 to 3,000. And then we rented across the complex. But we were just out of room.
So when did you move north?
That was 2012.
Okay.
So we got everything. We did our purchase agreement and financing in 2011.
Yep.
We opened January 1st, 2012.
Wow. And what was your role in the company at that point?
I would say I was effectively the CEO.
Yep.
We incorporated in 2009, and officially I became CEO. It's corporate documents. So.
And then Watson Recycling right now, what does that look location wise and
we've got between Watson and Infinite, we have around 45 employees.
Wow.
At the time, like I said, in 05, it was 3 of us.
Yeah.
And it was all family. So it's definitely been
That's
growing
really cool.
experience. Yeah, we have. So we grew to Orinoco in 2012. We grew to Austin in 2015. We built the Infinite location in Albert Lee, and we bought that in 2019. And then we went to Florida in 2021.
Wow.
So it's been good growth.
Yeah. A lot happening fast now.
It did.
Yeah.
It did.
So you said in 14 there was interest for that whole laminated glass, split. But when did you actually, like, you had the machine and like you were able to actually, do it?
2017 probably is when we first started on the whole experience. So we had this one large customer that we were working with them on their recycling, and they said, "Hey, help us out."
Yep.
So prior to that, it had been on my radar because we'd have people ask us, but it wasn't. The volumes weren't huge.
It wasn't enough to, like, really.
It wasn't enough.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then this customer asked, and this was big volumes. And then I said, well, okay, so we've got them. Let's see what else is out there just on this end, not customers we're dealing with, but just companies that may have this as a waste stream.
Right.
And so we did. We talked to everybody in the region.
So you weren't even thinking about a machine that could split it. You were just like, who can take this?
Who could take it?
We take it, we get our cut, and then we get it to them.
That's right, just to help them.
Yep.
And then, I said, okay, if we're going to invest a lot of money into this, we need to know that there's enough there to make
There's
it.
people, yeah.
Yeah, I've always said in recycling, you have to have a good supply and you have to have a good consumer. And if you've got both, you've got a reasonable business.
Yep.
And so the supply side was our first concern. And so it turns out there was a lot of it out there. And so we developed.
And how did you find that? Like,
we just, we knew what industry we were after at that point.
Yep.
What companies would be having this as a like a waste product. And so we called on all of them. Glass manufacturers. Yep. Fabricators, manufacturers. So we called on all of them.
Yep.
And we said, what are you throwing away? How many tons? And are you interested in recycling?
Right.
And so once the answer to that was a resounding yes, I said, okay, well, let's throw some money at this.
Okay.
And so we spent 2 years, probably from 2017 and 2018. By 2019, we had our first prototype, mid-2019. And then, we sort of went on a limb, bought the facility in Albert Lee to move into. We had in a building that we had, just an extra building in Austin at the time, but it wasn't big enough to do anything. We were just running some samples through. So we went on a limb, bought that building.
And Albert Lee, just because the building was there, or was there a certain?
It was good proximity to our major customer. It had a rail spur, which was a big thing for us. Like, that was probably the biggest thing that we were after. And then the building itself was very reasonable.
Yep.
It was a building that was perfect for what we wanted, and the price was right.
Because we were out there. It was a big building.
It's a great building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think that same building in Rochester would probably triple or quadruple what we paid for in Albert Lee. So
especially now.
Yeah, especially now. You're right about that.
So cool. So you buy the building, you get the machine in, and you're rocking and rolling. But like, where do you kind of take it from there? Because you're like, this is a need. You've looked all over the country. There's really no one that's doing this. So obviously there's potential. And but you're still, you got one facility in Albert Lee, and you're still trying to dial in, the machine that can do it.
Right.
How do you continue to grow? Like, what's?
Well, and I think that's every business too. You don't want to outgrow your cash flow.
Right.
And so when you have a new business, a baby business, odds are good it's going to take more cash than it makes for at least a couple of years, And so we had to determine the next step had to be another location. Either we're going to bring in investors, I guess that's number one, you bring extra outside cash. Or we were looking at this as we have to finance this internally through profits that we're generating with the recycling side of the business. So I wanted to make sure our next location was going to be a cost-effective operation.
Right.
I didn't want to go someplace that would be very expensive to be operational. So we have one of our biggest customers has a big manufacturing plant in Florida. And they've been asking us ever since we started helping them up here. They said, you got to help us. Can we put this on a rail car and ship it to you? They just want to be They want to stop landfilling.
Because it probably doesn't make sense to try to get those materials up.
Yeah, that's the problem with
Right.
glass. It's so heavy. You know,
Yeah.
the freight's so expensive. You really can't ship it reasonably from Florida to Minnesota. It won't work. So they said, you got to help us, you know. So we went down there and it did the same thing. We looked at all the companies in the area that were potential customers, how much waste they were having. And we said, yeah, this makes sense. So we put that location up in Florida. And
that was last year.
that was last year.
Yep.
Just the very end of last year.
Okay.
So December.
Yep. Oh, so you bought it and like started in December then?
We got the building operational in December.
Okay.
So we were working on that for probably 3 months.
I suppose you have to get the staff.
You get the staff, you get the equipment
get
built,
everything
you
in.
get the building. So it took us 3 months to get to
Yeah.
that point. And then we sent staff down there end of December.
And you didn't pick Florida, you know, to just be on the beach, right?
You know, it didn't hurt my feelings. If I had to have some place to go, I said, I'm not going any further north.
That's
We're
right.
gonna-
That's right. Yeah, guys, I'll be in the Florida location for the winter.
That's
and then
right.
I'll head back.
Yeah, call me in March. You might catch hold of me then.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So now thinking, you know, we're kind of catching up to speed here. You know, you have the 2 locations, but even then, there's still a lot of need. You know,
Well, there is.
where do you kind of take it from here?
Well, there's 2 sides to our business. We have the customer side, and that's what we've focused on so far. Customers that want to divert from landfill, you know. And the other side is the consumer that takes our clean glass and turns into a new end product.
Right.
And because of the way our equipment works, our glass is incredibly desirable on their end. So it's a nice, clean product. And so we've got a consumer that wants us to locate with them,
Yeah.
you know, at one of their sites, in order just to get more glass into that location. So that's one
Like
side
at
of
the
coin.
current state that it's in.
Yeah.
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 Because I remember seeing the just huge totes of glass.
Yeah.
And then you just running your fingers through it. And I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah. You think you're gonna cut your hand?
I
off,
thought you were
but really
crazy.
don't.
I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, like this is nuts.
At the end of the day, it's sand.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's primarily sand. So these consumers, recycled glass is an incredible substitute for raw material. You know, so if you're making glass or making fiberglass or making whatever you're making, recycled glass melts at a lower temperature. Most of the CO2 emissions that are emitted from glass happen in the initial process. So it takes like 120 pounds of virgin materials to make 100 pounds of glass. But if you're using recycled glass, it's 1-to-1.
Wow.
So that 20 pounds that's burned off or is contaminated or what have you that you lose, that's the carbon emissions. It doesn't take place when you're reusing recycled glass. So it's great for the manufacturer. So they're very interested in getting as much of that as they can. That makes them, lowers their emissions,
Right.
lowers their green footprint. I mean, it's a total net positive for them. But they can't get enough of it.
Yeah.
So they're asking us like, what can we do to get more of this type of glass coming into our product? So that's a good spot to be.
So
Yeah.
that's interesting. So then you're probably making, you know, majority of that money then selling
Yeah.
the recycled glass.
Right.
Not really getting it in and doing the splitting.
Yeah, so
right?
we get paid a small amount to recycle it, you know,
Yep.
because putting it through a process costs us time and,
Right.
and
It's got-
it's money, it's overhead.
Yep.
But yeah, we do get paid for it when we sell it to the end consumer.
Right. Huh.
So it's a very unique business where you sort of are paid on one side and also paid on the other side,
Yep.
which is a business I have never been involved in before.
Right. Right.
No, that's not to say we're getting rich, but it's a good business model, you know.
I mean, on the Watson side, you're paying for those materials
right.
and then you're selling them.
Yeah,
kind of
you're
thing.
paying on
Not
it.
Getting,
And you don't get any money back in until you've sold it, and then you're waiting, 30, 45 days after you've sold it. So the cash flow part of the equation is much different.
yep. And like right now, I suppose you're in that phase now where it's like, how fast can we grow, in a controlled way?
That's right.
But it's like, again, you could be all over the U.S.
We could. But lots of companies have outgrown their cash flow,
Yep.
and they're no longer around. And so I think that's the goal for us is I want to grow responsibly. I want every company, every location to be on solid footing before we go to the next.
Right.
And as long as that's the case, I think we're fine. They don't have to necessarily be profitable, but they got to be dang close to break even before
Yeah.
the next one happens. And as long as that happens, I think we're in good shape.
So where would is there plans for those next locations
Yeah,
already?
we've got the next locations will probably, like I said, be closer to consumers than customers. So we're looking at New York and then Texas for our next 2 locations.
Nice. Which are great,
Yeah,
great spots for just people and just a lot going on.
It is. It
Yeah.
is. There's plenty of growth in both regions. Florida is great because they have a lot of hurricanes. So the type of glass that we recycle is safety glass.
And it gets damaged.
Gets damaged.
You have to replace it.
Yeah, in Florida, that's actually built in their building code. If you're on the coast, you've got to have hurricane-proof glass in any new window, balcony building, commercial building, resident. I mean, everything has to be hurricane-proof glass. That's their building code. So, basically, we're primarily pulling from manufacturing waste. So the more they make, the more waste they generate, of course.
Well, that's I was like really surprised by the numbers of a manufacturer that's building glass. How much is getting damaged
Right.
and not usable.
Right.
And it's a large percent, isn't it?
It's a big percent.
Yeah.
From the time it's made in new glass, the time it hits somebody's house, it's up to 25% of that glass is waste.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Quality control,
Right.
cracks, whatever.
Well, like the crappy thing is, it could be hairline fracture.
It could.
It's like,
I mean, there's
oh, that ruins that.
we
you
get
know?
we get panels that are perfectly perfect, except they may have a microscopic defect in the tint that
Yeah.
you would never see with the naked eye. But because these are going into $1 million homes or buildings, they've got to be perfect. So they come to us.
Yep.
It's incredible. Yeah.
See, I love that. You're in an industry in the recycling field, and you just see a need, and like that's the. I mean, it's kind of. I mean, you're an inventor in a way. You've
Right.
made this machine that can like do something that virtually no one else was doing or could do, and it's just like, I mean, those are the exciting stories. Of like, here was a need, and like this is what fixed it, and now it's, sky's the limit.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's surprising to me that somebody didn't do it before. I'm not going to claim to be any kind of a genius. You know what I mean? This was doable by somebody
Right.
at some point in the past, and nobody chose to do it. And it's like, that's an opportunity. And there's so many more things in the recycling chain that are opportunities that are
Yeah.
exactly the same. That are just sitting there. They're going to landfill.
Why do you think that is? Is it because enough people don't shed light on it, because maybe it's not a glamorous industry?
I do think so. I think like the glass recycling industry in particular is dominated by one national company, and they primarily recycle bottles.
Yep.
And there's so many bottles going to landfill. I mean, they've got all they can do just to try to divert that. I mean, the numbers are staggering. There's like 7 million tons of bottles per year going to landfill.
Wow.
It's incredible. There's about 7.5 million tons of flat glass per year, which is what we deal with, going to landfill in the U.S.
That's crazy.
Every year. It's incredible. I mean, the volumes are huge. And I just think that there's a limited focus on this because plastics are in the news. I mean, like they're floating in the ocean.
Right.
You go to,
An island of plastic.
you're an island of plastic. There's the great plastic patch in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
Right.
It's all in the news.
Yep.
So companies have focused on that because I think that generates a bit more news. But glass is not in the news, and so it just doesn't seem to get the focus, and I don't know why. But yeah, like I said, the volume of glass that's being thrown away each year, just landfill, buried.
Oh.
It's silly.
Yeah.
It's not necessary.
Huh. So, obviously in growing, there's growing pains, and there's struggles that you have to kind of overcome. Through the journey from Watson Recycling to Infinite, what have kind of been some like hurdles that you guys have had to overcome as a company, as individuals, anything like that?
I think the biggest hurdle is financing. It's financial. So, for instance, when we were on North Broadway, we only did non-ferrous metals, which I just explained to you is like aluminum, copper, brass, stainless steel, things that won't stick to a magnet.
Right.
And we knew to expand to our next location, we want to do ferrous metals too, which involved a whole nother amount of, it's like cars, combines, industrial scrap, things like that. So you have to have a certain amount of equipment and a certain amount of footprint, like an actual, you have to have land.
Yeah.
And so we, on Broadway, we're doing something like, our best year was probably $3.5 million. It's a relatively small business. And that was our best year.
Yep.
So to grow to the next level, for our financials to work out, we've got to double it in year one.
Right.
And so telling a banker, hey, guess what? I know we're going to do it.
Yeah.
Like, believe in me.
Yeah, right.
Like, no one believes in you.
Yeah.
They believe it when you prove it. And so I went to probably every bank in town. And just got no's everywhere,
They didn't want to lend it?
They didn't want to lend it.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. To me, at my age now, I get it. It's a risk,
Yep.
like...
And was this lending for the Watson Recycling side or for the Infinite?
This is Watts Recycling.
Okay, yep.
So talking going 2011 now.
Yep.
So, yeah, we had a long run of being in business. We'd had some profitable years, but
Right.
to really hit that next level, they had to really believe that we were going to go from...
And what were you trying to get?
Well, it was like a $2 million, between $2 and $3 million expansion.
Yep.
And at the time we were renting, we didn't have any.
Yeah.
So I got turned down by everybody. And some banks said, okay, I'll give you half. I said, well, half doesn't do me any good. I can't buy this property for half.
Right.
It's just not going to be a thing. And it's funny how things work. I had a kind of offer from Wells Fargo at one point. And I told our realtor, I said, hey, I've got this offer. I'm waiting to get the details on it,
Yeah.
So he tells this other bank that was also looking at us, and this was after I already got all these no's. He tells this other bank, well, Wells Fargo is going to finance them, so you better get your offer in quick. Wells Fargo came back with the half price, we'll finance half of it if you can figure out the rest, which I didn't have $1 million to come up with,
Yep.
But this other bank wanted to get in, and so they gave us a loan offer
Yeah.
for the full thing.
Full thing.
And I don't know that it would have happened any other way than that.
Yep.
It's just funny how that works sometimes. But
That is crazy.
yeah, we took and ran. But it was like, to go from, growth is really hard financially. To go from, to grow exponentially without bringing in outside investment is incredibly difficult. And you really only do it over time because the banks need to see that you pay your bills, your track record.
Yeah.
That's the only way they trust it.
And at that time, you didn't want to try to bring in outside investors outside of the family?
I will admit that we did bring in some money
Yeah.
for the down payment. However, they weren't equity investors. They were
Yep.
they were a company that we worked with that wanted to lock up material in the future. So they took we took a discount on future sales
Oh, okay.
to get cash up front.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Which is one thing, even there, I've said it a few times on the podcast, is there's, as long as it's legal and ethical, there's really no rules. You can,
You got to do what you got to do.
you can make whatever deals that you want to do. And if someone's willing to take it, it's
Yeah.
get creative,
Yeah.
and I love that part of business because we can be creative as we want. And
Yeah.
there's no, when someone says it's this, it's well, you're not going to stop me from asking you that,
Absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, to some level, you just got to get it done.
Yeah.
So whatever that means, however you got to structure it. If you don't do it, there's nothing. So you've got to get it done. That was the most challenging part of business for me up to that time, was trying to, in my mind, it was a slam dunk. We were going to do it. There was no questions asked. And knowing what I know today, I don't know I could have done the same thing again, because I was very naive and I just knew it was going to work. And I didn't know it was going to be 3 years of hell.
It was
To be
3 years
profitable.
of trying to get that. Of being profitable.
Yeah, I'm saying, so after it took 2 years to get that even.
wow.
Yes. And then after that, the first 2 years were incredibly stressful.
Yeah.
Cash flow was tight.
Because then at that point, you're on the hook for the money.
You're on the
It's
hook. The payments are coming out every month, and it's And again, it was like we talked. You pay out upfront for material, so the more you buy, the more money you're paying out, and you don't get paid 30, 45 days after the fact, in our business. So, so that was a really big, the cash flow crunch was tremendous.
Well, and how much of, it's, you really think about large businesses, there's always this like large risk.
Always.
You don't just get to be a giant or get big or, whatever, double your business, after a certain point, if there's like you have skin in the game, there's risk, there's,
there's no risk, there's no reward.
Right.
You're always taking risks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
That's
I think
really cool.
At some level, you want to take risks that aren't going to bankrupt you. I mean, it's okay to be bankrupt when you're 25.
Yep.
But when you're 38, it's not as attractive to put everything on the line all the time.
Exactly. And like when, even when I started this company, it's not like it was a giant cash flow up front that I had, on the hook for, but I also quit basically with literally zero income.
Right.
It was, I left a full-time career job and went, hey, I see the potential in this, so I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
And again, there was investment up front with equipment, but it was more just, hey, you're starting with zero, make it happen kind of thing.
Did you start with employees or was it just you?
Just me at the beginning. This was about 8 months before Jake joined on.
Okay.
Yeah, and he was graduating from college with an accounting degree. So that, when he came on, it helped a ton with the knowledge that he knew, but then also, and I tell people, it's like, when he came on and to have a brother, someone that you can trust, huge already.
Tremendous.
I mean, just to have trust and like the same kind of work ethic and growing up together and stuff like that was big. But what it really allowed us to do was like, because editing takes a lot of time. So when Jake got to a point where he could take on editing and I could be more in the community, because we both shot, but he primarily did that at the beginning. And then that's when it just started taking off, because I could be with the people.
Yeah.
And business, and I feel like it gets more and more every year relational, because everyone is constantly being bombarded with this or that or this idea or this product or this advertising or this all the time. Mm-hmm. And it's like you delete it before it, damn near gets in your inbox. Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah.
So it's like it's really relational, and that's why I like Rochester too. We're a little big town. The people here support local.
Yes.
And there was also an instance of like your reputation here, and that can go good or bad.
It can
real quick.
Yes, it can.
And because everyone knows each other to some extent, and but I've loved every minute of it. And
well, that's just you wouldn't do it unless you loved it. You don't do it for the money.
Yep.
You don't do it for fame. I mean, you want to do it because you want to grow something.
Right.
You want to be your own boss, and you want to. That's the only reason to do it.
The growing it's just exciting. There's if you go into business just to be, hey, I'm gonna be rich, and like, one day maybe you can, but that journey, it's not, just rich the entire time.
No, you think you're going to be rich in 2 years.
That's right.
And then 2 years in, you realize, oh man, I hope I'm not bankrupt next year.
That's right. So it's like enjoying that process,
It's true. It's very true. I've said the same thing. I would not change it for the world. Like, I love being a business owner. And
what motivates you?
Growth.
Yeah.
Through and through. Yep. I love to build. I love to, like, it's not money. And it's truly, for me, money is just it's a thing you have to keep business growing. Mm-hmm. But I love growth, and I love expanding. I like to grow personally. I've gotten a chance to do some, speak at like some conferences, things like that. And I love all of that. Personally expanding. It pushes you.
Yeah.
And the more you go outside what you're comfortable doing, and the more people you meet, I just feel like it expands you as a person. And I mean, I think if you talk to my dad or any of my brothers who are partners with me, they would absolutely say it's just growth. Like that's it for me. That's all that I like what we do in the business. And I'm glad that it's good for the environment. I'm glad it's good for the world. I love
all
business.
pluses. Yeah. Yep.
I just love business itself. I love all parts of it. I love growing it. I love, being the CEO brings stresses with employees and like the day-to-day operations. I don't always love that. Who does?
Yeah. Yeah.
But everything else, I just really enjoy being a part of, seeing something, just.
Are you a big picture guy? Are you kind of?
I'm definitely a big picture guy.
Yeah.
But I will say I'm generally so busy that it's hard to get back. It's hard to sit back and really plan. It's like I'm always, not always reacting, but I'm always forced to keep things rolling because, I'm an active CEO too.
Right.
So a lot of things come on my plate every day. So yes, big picture, I would love to be able to sit back and just say, okay, we're going to strategically do this and this and this. And that's not my reality. Like I'm in the day-to-day grind too.
It's funny. I heard there was a guy one time that told me, early on, and I haven't really done it yet, but he says every year, he takes 2 trips, and I think they're a week long, and it's just him, no family, no friends, no nothing, and he's an owner, and the whole goal of it is that time, that intentional time to think big, and it's like, I think he. For a portion of the day, there's no screen, there's no phone, there's no nothing. It's just like pen, pad, paper, go relax by the pool, whatever. But it's like just time to reflect and like think and plan. And now, we're only, this is our 4th year in business, but you get so busy in that day to day where unless you're super intentional about your business development time, like it just keeps getting pushed to the wayside.
It does. Yeah, you can be involved working on your business 24/7, 365.
Because there's always stuff to do. Always stuff.
Yes. And I will say, do you have kids or?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Nope.
That throws another whole. So I have 5. Oldest is about to be 10. So 10 going down to a year and a half. But you go home at night and it's not you. It's their time. And you're going, like I was telling you, we went to Florida for a week, 2 weeks ago. But I would love to take that day or 2 days and sit down and sit with a pen and paper. But they're more important, so they take the focus. And I hope someday it changes to where I do have more time to be intentionally focused on what the business should do, But for now, I love every part of it. I love seeing the kids grow. I love seeing the business grow. I love feeling way overwhelmed and stressed out. It's great.
But I think sometimes we intentionally put stress on ourselves to just.
We don't have to.
To just push harder. Do you think your kids will be involved one day in the company? Is there hopes of that?
100%.
Yeah,
I do. I believe it. Whether it's as it exists today or whether it's who knows. In 15 years, when my kids are old enough to be interested, it's going to be something way different. But at least one of my kids is very interested in being a part of it, and I think there will be a couple, and I'm excited for it.
Right.
I want to see them. I want them to do whatever they want to do first of all. But I would love it if they wanted to join me in business, and my brothers would feel the same way with their kids. Like if we could take this from 3rd to 4th generation, that would be incredible. And I think it'd be a lot bigger. We'll have opportunity for everybody, so the kids don't have to grow up just being workers. They can be in the office. They can be salespeople. They can be executives. I think there's room to grow for all of it.
They get to start as workers.
They will. They would definitely will.
That's how that's when you really like.
That's how you should do.
Yeah.
Yep. You need to have a really base level knowledge of what you're doing, and
you appreciate it more.
And some empathy. Yeah. I mean, the way people that work for us really hard, and I know what they're going through because I did the same thing for a lot of years.
Right.
And so I think it lends a different feel to to people that work with us too.
I mean, a lot of 2nd and 3rd generation owners that have been in here on the podcast will say it's almost like a rite of passage. It's like because one day you will take over the company, but you still have all these employees that now have seen you work and like have this new respect for you,
right?
Because they can see that work ethic, because they can see you'll do, whatever it takes kind of thing. And I think that's really cool,
I think it's important. Not every business does that. Not every business owner wants their kids to work, from the ground level. And I have heard from other businesses that we work with. I mean, there's some resentment that builds if someone feels like a owner's kid came in at a top level position and did nothing to earn it.
After they've
And they're
been there
inept,
their entire life.
in their mind. Yeah, exactly
they're
right.
busted
They've been there
ass,
forever.
yeah.
They've built a lot of value for the owner, and they just feel like, what am I doing?
Just thinking back again, just on both companies, what have been, maybe some like key learning experiences that you can just reflect on and go like, wow, I learned this, or that's just been like a key component.
Well, number one, I think I've learned that it takes time. Everything feels too slow, and in your mind, it should all be so much faster and you should be so much further ahead. If you had told me when I started that I'd be where I'm at today, I would have thought that was about right. But I probably would have thought I would have at least 10 million in the bank and driving a Maserati, and no stresses.
Yep.
And it's not that way in real life, to build a business from small to big, it just takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of effort and a ton of sacrifice. And I think the other thing is too, within the family dynamic for us, there hasn't always been agreement to what's the next best step, and so the art of compromise is very important. You got to figure out how to keep everybody okay.
Right.
People aren't gonna be happy all the time, but they've got to be okay to go along with the vision. And so sometimes that meant for us scaling it back from what I wanted to do to take it a bit slower, and that turns out to be good. I don't always know what's best. There's other people that have really good wisdom.
Right.
And sometimes by not doing what I wanted to do, we turned out much better. And so I think that was a really valuable experience too. And then I think we've talked about the financial side of things where I think relationships, like you said, are huge. And once you get to a certain point where, you find good relationships in banking, once you get to a certain point and you're successful, everyone comes calling, and they want to be your best
I'll
friend.
lend you money now.
They do. Yeah, they all do. And when things aren't great, they were nowhere to be found, And so for me, it's sticking with and helping be successful. People help me be successful along the way too. And I think that's been really rewarding because I feel in there and that they appreciate the loyalty.
Yep.
And yeah, sure, I could find interest rates maybe 1% better somewhere or whatever, That's not the be all end all is your interest rate you're paying your loan.
And you're not thinking long term then.
And you're not.
Yep.
Because that day will come again when things aren't going great. That's business. And so having somebody that believes in you and trusts you and has a track record with you,
Yep.
that's what you need.
Priceless, yeah.
It is. It really is. Yep. So yeah, I think that's if I had to say 3 things I've learned, I think that's probably a pretty good summary.
Those are great. Even on the finance side, for when you guys really launched, Infinite, was there again those loans, or was Watson kind of doing enough where you could?
Well, so we bought the Villa in 2019. It was a terrible year for commodities. I mean, we saw, of the 12 months in 2019, 10 of those months saw down markets from the prior month in our industry. So I'll be the first to say, SBA does a tremendous job for small businesses.
Yep.
I think people that are looking to grow their business should certainly look at SBA type programs, because what that really does is it gives the bank assurance that if worse comes to worse, they're covered. So the SBA covers 40% of the loan.
Oh, yep.
The bank covers 50. You kick in 10 or 20, whatever the loan program is. But it essentially gives that bank the confidence to give you the money. And then for the business owner, that's on a 20-year term fixed. So it takes a lot of the uncertainty out of, rather than a 10-year bubble, which is generally 10-year balloon, which is generally what banks like to do. So we developed a very good reputation with a very good relationship with our local SBA, the 504 Corp. And Dwayne and Laura have done a tremendous job. Every expansion we've gone through prior to Florida, we've gone through with them.
Nice.
And at this point, they said, "Hey, Jeremiah, the 504 Corp knows you're okay, so just make sure the documentation that you're sending in is in the right format and is accurate. We'll get it done." And that's been huge. And it takes like I said, it takes your loan from a 10-year with a balloon to a 20-year fixed amortization schedule. It's really incredible. And we had in Albert Lee, we had three different organizations: Smith, Albert Lee EDA, and the state of Albert Lee kick in money to help us get in over there. So yeah, we didn't do it alone. We definitely had help from interested organizations that want their communities to grow.
Right.
And I always keep that in mind. I want to.
It brings growth. Economic
It brings
growth.
growth. So we've got about 20 employees over there, and we followed through on our commitment to them too.
Yep.
And I think they got what they wanted, and we were able to grow our company at the same time. So,
did you ever have to get over a fear of debt?
Oh,
I don't think we talk about that enough.
I'll tell you when it happened for me. 2008. I had taken this little leave from the business. It was a family business. It's a family business. And it was just feeling like, this is what I want to do with my life. Do I want to do something different? So I went up to stay with a friend in North Dakota. And I had no money. So I had to I had a pickup truck worth about $7,000. And so I basically went to a bank. I said, "Hey, I'm going to, I know how to do scrap metal. So I'm going to go buy this from these companies, take my truck as collateral, and I need a line of credit." And they said yes, which was silly of them. But I remember driving away from there and feeling like, this is not my truck anymore. It was free and clear, and now it's not mine. It's theirs. And they gave me a $50,000 line of credit with only the truck as collateral. And so it worked out, and it was good. But I grew up with the mindset that you should not have debt.
Right.
Debt is
I did too.
You did too, yeah.
Yep.
Debt's a bad thing to have. And on a personal level, I think I agree. And on a business level, I think you can't grow without debt. You definitely can't grow without debt. So it did take a mindset shift. And I wasn't afraid of debt. I was so confident we would do great.
Yep.
I figured we paid off in 3 years, And
it's the times when it's slow is where you really start.
You do. You think about it.
Man.
But the reality is, if you can just make your payments,
right?
That's all you got to worry about. So
because you look at the big picture, it's daunting. But if you're I'm just on the hook for this every month,
that's right,
and we can do this.
It's 2, 3, 5, 10, 20, 30 grand a month. It's as long as you can make the payment, that's all that matters. I mean, even now, we just bought a piece of equipment that was at $1.2 million, and it's that's a lot of money.
That's a lot, yeah.
But it's 15 grand a month,
Yep.
And so as long as this thing makes us more than 15 grand a month, it justifies the cost.
Yeah.
And that's how I look at it now.
And especially for, Infinite and the getting those multiple locations,
Yes.
and, there's going to be plenty of debt, with that happens in that. But again, just that opportunity is going to be.
You're always weighing it.
That's got to be
opportunity versus debt,
Yeah.
and that's I don't know what the right answer is. Nobody really does. You just hope that at the end of the day, you have enough cash flow to get through until the company's profitable. And that's really it.
And no college. Just learn as you go.
What are you going to learn in college? I mean, it's I've certainly learned a lot, and but I do think if you're a reasonably intelligent person, business isn't that complicated. And
it's easy to surround yourself with people that know specific things better than you.
You should.
And
you have to.
Yeah.
That's what I think too. I think if you're willing to admit that someone else can do it right, do it better, you have to
do what you're good at.
Let them do it. I do think company owners need to fill in the gaps. Whatever you're good at that your company's lacking, fill in that gap. And then when you're able to, hire somebody else to elevate them so you can focus on the next level.
So what would you tell somebody younger? We have a lot of owners that listen, but then there's still a lot of people that are just interested in business, entrepreneurship, growth, anything like that. And what would you tell even your younger self? Like, you got long career ahead of you, kind of
Right.
thing. And just advice that you give someone like that.
Boy, that's a great question. If my younger self knew what I knew today, it wouldn't have done what he did. You know?
Right.
It's like there's just no way. I think that a lot can be accomplished by belief and by the willingness to sacrifice. And if you're in the beginning stage of a business, I think you have to come into it with the understanding that you are going to have to sacrifice a lot to get through those first 2 or 3 years. You're not gonna be an instant millionaire.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you value as far as time, money, social life, all of that, you're going to have to be willing to put aside to make your business grow. And that's going to be your family for 2 or 3 years. And if you're willing to do it, you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's, I think, like I said, the hardest part for us was financing, but we're in a very, our overhead's high.
Yep.
We have to have equipment, we have to have machines that process material. Like, we're in a very high overhead business. If you happen to be in a business that has lower overhead and is primarily just a human element of it, it's people or smaller amounts of equipment, I think you can do it if you come in with the mindset that it's going to be a challenge and you have to just keep going. I'll give a good example. There was a point in our first year of business where we were just so, we had overruns on our construction costs. The money was just so tight. My grandpa happens to be a successful business owner in Rochester.
Mm-hmm.
And I called him and I said, Grandpa, I need money.
Yep.
I told my dad, I didn't really tell my brothers. I knew they would not want to do that. And
Borrow money from grandpa.
Yep. Yep. And I understood.
Yeah.
He's grandpa. So I called him. He said, okay. He met with me. And he said, okay, well, let's go down to the bank and talk to them together, because the bank was basically not willing to extend us any further credit, I guess is the best way to say it. And so I went down there with him, and he eventually came to the decision he couldn't help, because he wanted to keep the relationship between grandson and grandpa more intact than he wanted to help, Watts Recycling as a business. And he said, you're going to get through. Just tough it out. You're going to get through. And at the time, it felt completely hopeless. I knew there was no way we were getting through. Like, we were just at wit's end. But he was right.
At the time, was there any resentment?
Probably.
Granted, you see it in the long run as
Right.
absolutely that was a good move. But
at the time, I think I did feel a little bit hurt. That he wouldn't do that. But he was right.
Right.
He did the right thing, and he helped us. He helped me to just get through.
Mm-hmm.
And he was right. Like, the bank wasn't going to foreclose on us in year one. He knew that. But at the time, it didn't feel that way to me. And so, but I think the point is, like,
it probably pushed you too, though.
Well, I knew I didn't have, sometimes in the back of your mind, you've got this backup
If there's
plan.
a safety net, then
Yes.
you don't do everything all the time necessarily.
Yeah. Yep. You've got this idea like, okay, well, worst comes to worst, I'll call Grandpa.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Grandpa wasn't there. And so, yeah, you're right.
Now let's figure it out.
Let's figure it out. Yep. So he did the right thing, and I'm completely appreciative that he did.
Absolutely.
This many years later. But at the time, yeah, that was a tough blow. It really was.
Huh. And I think you made a good point too. Just like if your past self knew it, you knew now, you wouldn't do all those, the same things.
Right.
But I think even thinking about that, just as like an advice standpoint, is like you kind of just have to do it.
You just do what you have to do.
Because you said, oh, you might not do those same things, but like those are the things that taught you.
Yeah.
What you know now.
Well, I think that's the truth. Like, at some point, you're not afraid.
Right.
Because you've been through it. And so for me anymore, fear of failure isn't a fear. Like, I'm not afraid to go out there and fail miserably, because I've done it. I've made bad decisions that almost cost us the company. And we came through it. And it's like, I'm not afraid to fail. I'm not afraid to make decisions. And I think in business, you have to hit that point, because if you can't make decisions, your business is dead. Like, you know, you have to be able to make decisions and live with the fallout. And until you get to a point where you're not afraid of the fallout, it's really hard to make the tough decisions. You just kind of back burner them, you know, and hope they go away.
You never get to your full potential.
You don't.
Like that.
You don't.
You know, living with, you know, through fear and never
That's right.
taking the risks that are needed.
Yeah, until you look fear in the face, you're just not going to hit your full potential.
Yeah.
And once you have, I mean, there's a whole other world out there.
I like it. Well, sweet. You know, Jeremiah, it's been awesome having you on today, and you know, I learned a lot. Again, I love these things, and there's always people out there that are just further along and smarter, and you know, you want to be a sponge in business.
You do.
Just take it all in, figure out, you know, what you want to do and what not, and you know, proceed from there. But man, there's always something to learn.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, thanks for the chance to talk. I mean, this is probably one of the first times I've told some of the real true details of how business life actually is for us. And so I hope it's helpful.
It is.
You know, for people out there that are, like you said, starting business or new in business. It's doable. It's hard work, but it's doable, you know.
I love it. Well, sweet. You know, again, big thank you. Thank you to the listeners. You know, again, we hope you learned something and you've enjoyed the episode. And if you have enjoyed that, just remember to share that out. And we'll see you guys on the next one.